Hi, I'm Jody Lane with Accelerated Medical Practices, and we host a monthly mastermind just for hormone clinic owners and providers. And it's designed to help you solve the real world challenges you face in your clinic every day. Each session starts with a short teaching topic, just like the one you're about to watch, led by the AMP team. Then we dive into live problem solving with the group. And whether you share, contribute, or just listen, you're going to walk away with something useful to improve or streamline your practice. It's low cost, it's no commitment, and you get the replay if you miss it. And because I really want you to check it out, I'm going to give you your first month absolutely free. Just email me at Jody, Jody, at acceleratedmedicalpractices.com with the word mastermind, and I'll send you the invite. You've got nothing to lose and a whole community to gain. Here we go. Using goals to win revenue. So I'm going to throw in a few words of wisdom throughout this presentation. Life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to it. And why that is important is because a lot of people find themselves not really wanting to look at numbers and the finances because for a lot, usually the excuse is time, but I find that a lot of times what it really is not really knowing what to do with that information. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about what those metrics are and what we're going to do about it. But before we start there, I want to take us back and tell you a little bit of story. Back in 2003, I started a digital marketing agency in Orlando, Florida called Barnett and Murphy. I started it with a friend of mine that I was working with at a different agency. It was one of those situations where we said, we could do this ourselves. Let's just take ourselves out of this business and go do it ourselves. We thought we could, no big deal. Immediately got a great client and started making some money. We never really took the time to sit down and create any kind of sales goals, any kind of metrics, any kind of KPIs to make sure that we were doing the work we needed to do to reach our goals. And that was fine because for the first 3 years, we just kept making money. We brought on more clients, more revenue, brought in more staff, spent more money on marketing, did all the right things, and our revenue just kept growing and growing until 2006. And those of you who remember 2006, we hit a dead end recession where all of a sudden businesses did not have money to do marketing, let alone the kind of marketing we were doing, which was very high end, and all of our revenue dried up. And we had no plan. We had no idea how we got from where we were. We didn't really understand what our marketing was doing for us and how we were growing. We knew nothing. And so it was like starting over, and it was extremely painful. And it was that lesson that really taught me that the only way to make probable success, and those of you who know me, you've heard me talk about possible versus probable success. The only way to have probable success is to really do the work at the beginning to create goals and metrics, and then go back and use those goals and metrics to identify where you are and what you can do about it. So that is why I am so passionate about this topic. And I'm so happy that I got a chance to talk about it for this next 12 minutes because I really think that it's that important. So what are we going to go over today? We're going to talk about why goal setting and tracking is so important to your overall success, above and beyond my little story. What exactly should you track? And what are you going to do with the information once you gather it? So let's go ahead and dive in. So why is goal setting so darned important? A couple of reasons. First is you want to know where you can grow. So by looking at the different areas that you can spend your time on, the different metrics, you can know how you're going to be growing. You also want to be precise with how much you're spending on marketing. I've said this quite a bit lately. People ask me, how much money should I spend on marketing? And the industry answer is 20% of your revenue should go to marketing. And I disagree with that. I think that knowing how much money to spend on marketing is a direct relationship to how fast you want to grow. If you want to bring on 2 patients a month, that's a very different marketing budget than if you want to bring on 20 patients a month. And I don't care how much money you have already in your business. So 20% of $1 million business that wants to bring in 1 or 2 patients does not have the same marketing spend as somebody who wants to grow faster. More importantly than anything, you can find mistakes when you can still do something about it. We've all made mistakes in business, whether it's hiring the wrong vendor or doing a marketing campaign that didn't work, or even just getting invoiced the wrong amount. If you don't have any goals or any metrics to track, then those mistakes will go unchecked for quite a while. And if they ever get found, it very well could be too late to do anything about it. And when you rely on somebody else to do this work for you, it really can bite you in the ass. Like every single one of you that owns their practice, you've got to be a part of this in some way. Now, some of you have staffs and you can give this work to those people. But if you're not engaged, at least getting the reports on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, and you're staying on top of things, then, it very well could bite you in the ass in the end. So you want to be a part of it at least a little bit. Also, when you're keeping track of sales goals, it doesn't require you to be a business person. I hear that all the time from providers. I didn't go to business school. That's okay. As long as you know where you're going, you can become a business person. I equate tracking goals to like if you decided tomorrow that you were going to go run a marathon. No one's going to get up out of their couch and never run before and then go run 26.2 miles. This doesn't happen. But you create a training program. You say, I'm going to run this many miles on these days, and this is how many miles I'm going to get to a week. And then you're going to go back and you're going to make sure that you're doing that. And eventually, 6 months, 6 to 8 months later, you realize, okay, I stayed on track with my projections, and therefore now I can run a marathon. You don't necessarily have to be a runner. And it's the same thing with business. And it would be very hard to fail in business if you did this because you are staying on top of what's going on and therefore you're most likely going to adjust. So don't wait until you have a reason, like we did at Barnett and Murphy, to do any of the things we're about to talk about. So, how do we set goals? First thing is, don't overcomplicate it. It may seem like a daunting task, but it really isn't if you just think about things logically. Because the truth is, you can't be wrong with your goals. It is your business. Now, you can be unrealistic, absolutely, but you can't be wrong. So, sitting down and beginning the process is really important. So let's start first with the big picture. You want to think through what revenue do I want to be at the end of this year? And that's why January is a great time to have this conversation, because if you start creating goals in August, you don't have a lot of time to reach them. But in January, if you sit down and say to yourself, okay, where do I want to be at the end of the year? Now we can start using that number to work backwards. Then I like to work off of new patient numbers versus revenue numbers. So it's very easy to say I'm going to make $10,000 a month. But if that $10,000 equals one patient, or that $10,000 equals 10 patients, that's a much bigger difference. So I like to decide, okay, my expectation is to bring in this many new patients each month. And then you multiply the average cost of your service by that number of new patients. And hopefully that gives you the same number as your big picture. Oh, and add the current number of patients. Of course, that's very important. If you're already in business, you want to add the current number of patients that you already have by service and multiply that average cost of service, because obviously you're going to be continuing to make money from your existing patients. Now, a hint, you may want to allow for some of those patients to cancel along the way if you want to get really specific. But if you want to keep this simple, don't do that at this point and just add in those current number of patients. And then add up the monthly revenue of each service and you have the expected revenue by month. So if you currently have, let's say in your hormone plans, you have 10, I'm going to use simple numbers. You have 10 patients and you want to add one each month, then you're going to have 11 on month one and 12 on month two and so on and so forth. So then add those numbers together. And then now comes the fun part. You can look at whether or not that number of new patients plus existing patients multiplied by the average cost of service and then add up all the services, does that equal the expected revenue that you wanted at the end of the year? And if it does, fantastic. Then you've done your job. If it doesn't, then you just need to take a look at whether or not you're being realistic. So if you're currently at $20,000 and you want to be at $220,000 and you have $0 to invest in marketing, then that may be an unrealistic number. So this is not an activity that is like a formula. It's not like an algorithm that you can just plug numbers in and boom, it figures it out. It's really more of a puzzle. It's really more of figuring out each step along the way. And then when you get to the end, did it all equal out? And if it didn't, then go back and adjust some numbers until you get to the correct answer. All right, so let's plug in a little word of wisdom. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And I truly stand by that. If you don't know what to expect, then whatever you got is what you got. And you don't know if it was good or if it was bad. It's just what you got. So you've got to be measuring things so that you can decide what to do about it. So, what should you track? Here's a list of some of the things that you could be tracking. These are my recommendations. First is sales goals by service type. Now, if all you do is hormones, then you're good. That's all you're doing is figuring out your sales goals for hormone plans. But if you also do pain management, if you do aesthetics, if you do weight loss, then you want to separate those service types individually and create sales goals for each because most likely they're going to have different price points and they may have even different audiences. Then track the number of incoming leads. Those leads could be from phone calls, from referrals, from lead forms. Now, if you want to get real specific, you could track each of those leads by where they came from. Or if you want to keep it simple, then just track number of leads. Because if you're doing no tracking, then at least if you're doing some, then you're doing much better. But I like to track things individually by where the leads are coming from. And then I really recommend that you track number of new patients because you're going to start to see trends. So you're going to see the number of leads coming in, the number of new patients, then the number of new patient appointments that actually converted to paying patients. And what's that going to tell you? If you start looking at those three data points, you're going to not just be able to tell whether or not your sales are in line with where you want them to be. You're also going to be able to tell if your marketing is working. And so if you've got a ton of leads, but not a ton of converted patients, guess what? There's something going on that needs to be fixed. You also want to track the number of cancellations, and I strongly recommend that you include the reason. And you can do this simply on an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet by month and just put the patient's name and why. And the first month, the second month, it may not be that impactful, but as you do this over the course of a year, you can start to look back, or even by quarter, start to look back and see if there are trends. If you're seeing cancellations continuously for people who say they can't afford it, okay, maybe you're going after the wrong audience. Or if you're seeing a number of people that are canceling in the first or 2 months, then you're not setting them up expectation wise properly to see that it takes some time for the hormones to kick in. So tracking the number of cancellations and the reason, again, gives you more insight into what to do about it. And definitely want to be tracking your expenses, your fixed costs and your cost of goods sold. Now, taking action to get this done. If you're not already doing this, then it's probably because you don't see the value. I'm hoping that in this 15-minute presentation, maybe a little bit longer, you're starting to see the value and the importance. So if you don't already see that, stop and ask yourself, why don't you think this is a life or death task? And be honest with yourself, because this is not fun. Nobody thinks this is fun. Maybe I think it's fun, but very few people think that tracking metrics is fun. So if it's not fun, and you don't see the value, there's a really good chance you're not going to do it. And if that's you sitting out there, then I encourage you to give me a call tomorrow and let's set up a time to get on the phone free of charge. And let's just talk about what's going on in your business so that we can get you to a place where you actually are starting to do this. Because if you are not tracking, then your success is happenstance. So number one, you want to write everything down. One of the greatest values to goal tracking is to see trends. So if you're just tracking things in your head, you're not going to see the trends unless you have a absolutely photographic memory. It's probably not going to happen. You also want to get an accountability partner. Remember what I said? It's not fun. So if you have somebody that you have to go to on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis to discuss the results of your tracking, you're more likely to do it because we don't like to go to people and say, oops, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So it could be someone in your office, it could be a partner outside of your office, like your spouse or a dear friend, or it could be here at AMP. One of us could be your accountability partner, but you want to have somebody that you're expecting to give the results of these reports to so that you guarantee that you get them done. And then also, I recommend scheduling time to do it. So you don't want to rely on, oh, I'm just going to find the time whenever I have a little bit of extra hours in my day, because those extra hours in your day are going to be taken up by something that you are more drawn to. So get it on your calendar. Schedule 4 hours each month, maybe on a Friday, the first Friday after the quarter is over, to do this work. Because what I can almost guarantee is that while you may resist it, you may not like it, it may not be fun, if you do it consistently over the course of, let's say, at least 6 months, I think you're going to see the value so strongly that no one's going to be able to stop you from doing this work. So you've tracked it, you know what to track, you're writing it down. What do you do with it? So, plugging in a word of wisdom, if you want something you never had, you're going to have to do something you never did before. So, if you've never done this before and success is a goal for you, then I recommend you add this in to your schedule this year. So, don't track and then not react. It's actually Jamie who taught me this many years ago when I was like, okay, I'm going to track every KPI that I could possibly think of. And he always said to me, what are you going to do with that one? What are you going to do with that one? And if I couldn't come up with what I was going to do with the information, then why bother spending the time to track it? So you really want to be intentional about tracking the things that you're going to do something about, and I'm going to give you top 10 things that you can do with your tracked data. And when I finish with this, we're going to be done and I'm open up for questions. But these are just 10 things off the top of my head that you'll be able to do in your practice if you do this work and actually track your data. Number 10. The metrics you measure now will help you set up your success for next year's planning. So every time that I work with a practice and it's the first time we're creating goals, it's a little bit of a guess because we don't know what happened the year before or the year before that. So every year that you do this work, you are better positioned with information and knowledge to set your next year up more carefully and more accurately. So that's number 10. Number 9, you can fire or rehire vendors. Oftentimes we react to a vendor, either they are doing a great job, not doing a great job, but do we really know? And if they're doing something that is benefiting your practice, you should be able to determine whether or not they're doing a good job based on the information that you're tracking on their behalf. Number 8, you can better train your salespeople and or your front desk staff. So as again, you're tracking those cancellations, you're tracking whether people are converting from lead to a paying patient. If you're seeing a lot of breakdown, it may or may not be the provider having the conversation, right? There's a lot of other people in the practice that your patients talk to way before they ever get to you. And if those interactions are not extraordinary, you could lose that patient to a competing hormone practice or a competing functional medicine practice, and you'll never know exactly where it's coming from. Number 7, you can create new lead generation campaigns for a service that isn't performing well. So if you do multiple services in your practice, you may find it difficult to decide where to spend your money. If you've got, let's say, a $2,000 ad budget and you have 7 different services, there's no way you can market all 7 services off of $2,000. So how do you pick? If you begin to track all of your sales and how they're competing against the goals that you had, and one service is not doing as well as another, then that's the one you want to focus on for a little bit until you gain some traction. Number 6, improving patient experiences. Going back to those number of cancellations or the patients that come in as leads but don't convert. If you know what the reason is why they didn't convert or why they canceled, then it would be easier for you to make changes internally in your operations, in your interactions with people, and the whole patient experience so that you get a better outcome. And then number 5, reward your staff if their actions are responsible for upward trends. I talked a lot about negative things, but oftentimes when we are tracking our data and comparing it against our goals, we're seeing that we're doing a really great job. And wouldn't it be great to be able to see that people are constantly saying that your front desk is the reason they come because they're so pleasant, they're so warming, they're so engaging. Then you can do something to acknowledge those front desk team members and thank them for that. Number four, you can A/B test market campaigns that are underperforming. So it's very often when people are doing marketing, if a marketing campaign is not doing as well as you'd like it to do, it's usually if you're not tracking the data, you're reacting based on feeling. But if you're actually tracking, you'll know whether or not the campaign is performing specifically. And if a campaign isn't performing, as Jamie mentioned in our presentation last month, you can do some tweaking, do some testing before you just completely abolish the campaign and do something else. Number three, revisit your patient consultants and your providers if your prospects aren't becoming patients. If everything else is going great, but you're not converting patients after they go through all the process, then maybe it's the way that your providers are doing their consults. Maybe you need to sit in on the consults and make sure that not just they're doing a good job as a doctor, but they've got a good bedside manner and they're making the patient feel secure and confident and all of that. Number two, you can plan for purchase of new equipment or office upgrades. So if you see that you are halfway through the year and you're 10% ahead of your sales goal and you think that it's going to continue, you can make some planning for some additional purchases. And then number one, my favorite, you can celebrate when actuals are better than goals. There's nothing more rewarding than getting to the end of the quarter and seeing that you were going to make $275,000, but you actually made $325,000. That feels so good. But again, if you don't have goals to compare against, then it's just what happened. So, my last word of wisdom, to become the top 5%, you're going to have to be willing to do what 95% of everyone else won't do. So, I know that this may not be fun and it may take some time, but I promise you that if you're going to be in that top 5%, 95% of everybody else are not going to be doing what we talked about here today. So, thank you so much for your attention for that presentation.